So we have evidence suggesting it's not. We have a dearth of evidence suggesting that it is. So yeah, and that combined with the fact that it is by every metric a worse protein than literally any animal protein, not to mention the beneficial fats that come with that protein rather than the harmful fats that come with the soy. Well, then to me, the court is out and the verdict is in animal protein all day.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting. I think a lot of women are afraid of protein. They're afraid of eating enough protein. When I start doing, just food diaries with, middle-aged women, I'm oftentimes shocked that they are eating really tiny, itty bitty portions of protein, far too many carbohydrates. I mean, quinoa is a great example. I think Dr. Gabrielle Lyons said, 6 ounces of steak equates to 6 cups of quinoa, which if you just take the calorie piece out, the amount of carbohydrates, and we know that we become physiologically more insulin resistant as we age. So
Yep.
the worst thing you can be doing is eating copious amounts of carbohydrates, which is not to suggest that there are, good quality choices of carbohydrates, but certainly in middle age. And I think this also very likely applies to men as well. If we're looking at the average American, 88% of
Hmm.
individuals are metabolically unhealthy. Most, if not all of us, need to be eating less carbohydrates, more, non-starchy vegetables, certainly low glycemic berries if you're doing those kinds of things, and less focus on breads and pastas and, these very highly hyper palatable, highly addictive processed carbohydrates.
That's right. And they always come with fat. That's where we are bucking nature, and certainly an ancestral way of eating. The diet we have nowadays is high carb, high fat. Those two don't come together.
Mhm.
It is carbohydrates on their own, which is every fruit or vegetable or grain that's almost purely just starch or sugar. And then you have, in contrast, fat and protein, which
Mhm.
essentially always come together. Now, we have some exceptions where we have gotten oil from say some plants, from some fruit, and fruit oils are fine. That's coconut, avocado, olive. That's a fat. Those are fats that we've been eating since the beginning of time. But other than those exceptions, fat always comes with protein. That's how we should get them. And part of the frustration for me is that when people are told to base a diet primarily on carbohydrates, I have two significant sources of resentment against that advice. One is that you are now focusing on the macronutrient that spikes insulin the most. I have a problem with that. I'm an insulin guy, so of course I do. Two, you are now focusing on the one macronutrient that is not essential to humans. Now, neither you nor I are saying, well, then let's not eat any. We're not saying that. We're more nuanced than that. Yes, you can eat them, you can enjoy them, but eat them in as natural a state as possible. But at the very least, we should say, what is essential in the human diet? There are essential fats, there are essential amino acids. Thankfully, animal proteins have all of those. Let's focus the diet on those two. The fact that they also have little to no effect on insulin, well, that's just icing on the cake. Um, but let's not base the diet on the one macronutrient that is actually not essential to humans. And that's not debatable. Even the most dogmatic dietitian has to admit that carbohydrates are not essential to humans. Now, again, none of us are saying let's not eat them at all, but let's certainly appreciate that that is the extra stuff. That is the stuff that can be sprinkled around the edge of the plate, whereas the bulk of the plate should be made up of the things we actually have a biological need for, protein and fat.